Welcome to Trending Unpacked, the show where we explore the stories behind the trends shaping our world. Today, we're taking a close look at three little words. Words that are really doing a lot of work right now, shaping how we talk about knowledge, credibility, and, well, skepticism online. I know ball.
Hmm.
If you're listening to this, I mean, you've almost certainly seen it around, right? It's this phrase that started out as, genuine, pretty straightforward sports jargon.
Yeah, just a simple way to say someone knew their stuff on the court.
Exactly. But it's totally jumped the fence now. It's become this kind of universal cultural shorthand. Doesn't matter if it's basketball or the latest superhero movie or even like macroeconomics.
Hmm.
You see this phrase being used both to say someone's an expert, but maybe actually far more often now to kind of mock people who claim they are.
And that's the really fascinating part, isn't it? That transformation, that journey from like a sincere compliment to this ironic weapon. That's exactly what we're digging into today. We've got the source material here laying out the cultural, the linguistic drift of this phrase. And our mission really is to figure out what the evolution of I know ball tells us about, the digital landscape today. So for you, the listener, we're focusing not just on what it means right now, but why it changed so dramatically. What's this linguistic trend revealing about how credibility gets, manufactured?
Recognized.
Or recognized, yeah.
Yeah.
And dismantled, especially in these decentralized online communities, these echo chambers. It's a really interesting study in performance and perception, actually.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the fact that a phrase so rooted in sports talk can become like a primary tool for talking about intellectual posturing in completely different fields, political science, film theory, whatever, it's kind of remarkable.
It is.
So let's unpack it. We really have to start right at the beginning, don't we? Back when the phrase was, well, maybe pure, entirely sincere.
Yeah, got to trace it back.
Our sources are super clear on this point. The phrase was definitely born inside that highly opinionated, really fast-paced world of sports fandom.
Right. High stakes opinions there.
Definitely. And within that world, it gained particular, almost explosive traction within the sort of tight confines of basketball Twitter.
And that specificity, that's key.
Yeah.
Basketball is, it's a complex sport. Constant tactical shifts, loads of stats readily available.
Very analyzable.
Exactly. It breeds this culture of hyper-analysis. I mean, if you just look at the speed and the heat of arguments around trade deadlines or player evils or coaching strategies.
Oh, yeah. Instant and intense.
Totally. They happen instantly, often super polarized, so you kind of needed a quick shorthand. And the original function of I know ball, it was incredibly practical, really utilitarian. It was just this immediate, almost verifiable assertion of credibility about the game analysis.
So if you knew ball,
it meant you understood the rotations, right? Or the impact of a specific defensive coverage, like a pick and roll, or maybe the nuance of some advanced metric. It basically meant your opinion wasn't just hot air, it was earned.
it sounds like it serves as a kind of quality filter, didn't it?
Yeah.
A simple way to separate, the casual observer who just watches the highlights from the really dedicated fan.
That's a good way to put it.
The one who's tuned into the whole ecosystem,
Yeah.
understands the history, the context.
Exactly. It was like a badge of honor almost, a sort of peer-reviewed certification delivered in just 3 words. For that highly engaged fan, posting some complex take and getting a reply like, he knows ball, that was social gold.
Validation.
Total validation. It justified the hours spent poring over box scores or watching game film. In this sea of anonymous, often loud opinions, it kind of established a pecking order, a hierarchy.
But the sources point out something really fascinating here, something that kind of sets the stage for everything that followed. This duality, this tension.
Mhm.
It was apparently there almost right away.
Yeah, it wasn't pure for long.
It seems like the phrase never really existed in a completely sincere bubble.
That's absolutely right. The momentum was kind of simultaneous, building this tension right from the jump. So on one side, you had your dedicated writers, your sports commentators, the real deep knowledge fans using it sincerely, the true believers affirming genuinely valid insights.
Okay.
But on the other side, and just as quickly, the phrase got co-opted by meme accounts, by people focused more on cultural commentary.
The irony engine starts early.
Right. They started using it, ironically, often to mock the sheer unfounded confidence of really bad takes. So this shows the community was immediately self-aware, aware of a potential for just posturing.
So even back then, if someone posted a truly wild trade idea, something that would obviously cripple a team.
Yeah, like trading their star player for peanuts.
Right. Another user could reply, I'll say I know ball. And everyone in that community just knew that the speaker was actually mocking the act of asserting expertise while holding this completely ridiculous position.
Precisely. That subtle internal self-critique. That meant the phrase wasn't just about the content of the knowledge, the facts. It was always, maybe subconsciously at first, about the performance of knowing.
The performance.
Yeah. And that ironic layer, that was like the genetic code for its eventual massive cultural pivot.
And that pivot, that's where the real analysis starts, right?
Yeah.
Moving from its little niche origin in sports to becoming this, well, true linguistic artifact, where it transforms from that literal assertion to what it is now, mostly.
Mostly ironic shorthand.
Yeah. Let's focus on that shift because it feels critical. The sources absolutely confirm that the phrase has transitioned almost completely, from being initially serious to now being mostly used humorously or ironically.
Definitely. It's actually quite rare now to see it used completely sincerely outside of very specific, like high-context sports discussions.
And this change, it wasn't random, was it? It reflects a core function it took on.
No, not random at all. It's now most often deployed specifically to mock self-proclaimed experts. Those people who weaponize loud confidence, aggressive rhetoric, maybe to hide a fundamental lack of actual deep knowledge.
Right. The keyboard warriors?
Pretty much. If you see some viral thread about, I don't know, the best way to organize a spice rack.
Okay, random example, but I follow.
And someone replies with this, like, 15-point overly zealous manifesto on coriander storage techniques. The reply, yes, they truly know ball. It just instantly deflates that aggressive posturing. It uses the language of expertise to mock the excess of expertise claimed.
But let me push back on that just a bit, based on the material here. If the people using I know ball, ironically, are mocking that performative expertise,
okay,
are the sources suggesting that the people using the phrase ironically are somehow exempt from that same critique? Doesn't the irony itself become a new kind of performance, like the performance of being self-aware and superior?
That's the critical nuance right there. And the sources do suggest, you're absolutely right, the core cultural meaning here. This is kind of the aha moment for you listening. Yeah. It's the connection between this linguistic drift and the wider phenomenon of online expert culture.
Right.
We're living in this digital space where often authority is claimed through tone, not credentials. Confidence over competence sometimes. So the irony acts like a defense mechanism. By saying, I know ball, ironically, the speaker is actually performing skepticism, and skepticism itself has become its own form of social currency online.
Interesting. So they're claiming insight, but into what?
Insight into the rules of the game, the rules of online posturing. Even if they don't actually know the facts of the specific argument, say, about the spice rack, they know how the argument game is played online.
So it's less about what you know about, say, coriander, and more about how forcefully and confidently you say you know it.
Exactly.
And then how quickly you can comment on someone else's performance of knowing it. The phrase becomes this meta-commentary on the whole performance of expertise itself.
Perfectly put. And this points straight to that credibility vacuum that often exists in these decentralized online discussions. I mean, why should I automatically trust a traditional credential, a diploma, a job title, when I'm talking to a username like CryptoBro420 who's using all caps and like 10 rocket emojis?
Right. The signals are different.
Totally different. In an environment where anyone can publish instantly and where the algorithms often favor speed and confidence over, say, careful rigor, traditional forms of evidence feel slow, cumbersome.
They don't go viral as easily.
Exactly. Speed and perceived certainty tend to win. So the irony baked into I know ball functions as a kind of response to that environment. We almost assume the person loudly claiming expertise might be doing it performatively because the digital incentives often reward that performance more than actual substance.
That whole idea of performance, it brings us to the underlying psychology, doesn't it?
Yep.
What need is actually being met when someone uses this phrase, whether it was sincerely, way back when, or ironically now?
Yeah, the sources outline a pretty clear psychological driver here. The phrase essentially encapsulates how people seek to appear informed to others. It's not always about genuine, deep intellectual work.
It's about perception.
It's often about establishing social currency. In today's attention economy, appearing informed, or maybe appearing savvy enough to spot a fake expert, that's a valuable form of clout. It gets you noticed.
And crucially, this validation seeking, it mostly happens within echo chambers, right? That's what the sources emphasize.
Yeah, that's key. The goal of using the phrase often isn't really to convince some external opponent of a fact. The goal is more about reinforcing the speaker's own standing within their specific, usually trusted, often quite niche community.
So if I use I know ball, ironically, to mock some terrible take on a movie I don't even care that much about, I'm actually signaling to my followers, hey, I get the rules of good film criticism. I'm validating my own taste, positioning myself as like the smarter observer in the room.
Precisely. And this leads to another function the sources touch on, which is really interesting, the phrase as a kind of linguistic Teflon coat.
Okay, what does that mean? Teflon coat.
It means, let's say a speaker uses the phrase to assert a truly ridiculous or maybe indefensible take, like the moon landing was faked, I know ball.
Right, something totally out there.
And they face pushback, people challenge them, they can instantly retreat into irony.
Plausible deniability.
Exactly. They can just claim, oh, it's just a joke, obviously it was a meme, I was just, participating in the cultural shorthand. This gives them that deniability.
So they get the attention.
They asserted a bold position, got attention, maybe rallied their base within the echo chamber, and then, if challenged by outsiders, they suffer basically zero reputational damage because they can just fall back on the shared cultural understanding that the phrase is inherently kind of self-mocking anyway.
Wow, that's a remarkable mechanism. It's a way to get all the upsides of intellectual posturing, the attention, the validation within your group, while totally insulating yourself from the consequences of actually being wrong.
Yeah. It allows for intellectual risk-taking without demanding actual intellectual accountability.
Okay, that dynamic asserting knowledge, without really needing to show your work, without providing receipts, that's not unique to just, I know ball, is it?
No, not at all.
Our sources confirm this phrase is really part of a bigger trend, a sort of linguistic family of credibility shortcuts, all designed, it seems, to bypass that traditional need to actually present evidence.
Absolutely. I know ball is maybe the most self-aware member of this family, the most meta, perhaps, but it definitely functions alongside several other common phrases, and they all serve that strikingly similar purpose, asserting unchallenged expertise or some kind of unique, unverified knowledge, especially in the digital public square.
Let's maybe break down some of these related phrases, because looking at them together really paints a clearer picture of what modern online credibility, or maybe the performance of it, looks like.
Good idea.
They show this collective shift away from evidence and more towards just pure assertion, confidence.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. We can probably start with the most famous one, maybe the most brazen, trust me, bro.
Ah, yes, the classic.
The sources highlight this as the ultimate appeal to immediate, very localized, totally unverified trust. It's like the lowest effort proof possible. Just a naked appeal to intimacy, almost.
Right. There's no data, no citation mentioned.
Nothing. No methodology. The only proof being offered is just the speaker's own perceived authority, derived purely from that immediate, maybe momentary relationship they're trying to establish with the listener. It basically asks the listener to suspend all critical judgment based on, like, a 2-second connection.
It really is the verbal equivalent of a handshake deal, isn't it? Except you often have no idea who you're even shaking hands with online.
Exactly. It's the absolute opposite of, say, peer review or rigorous journalism.
Totally. Okay, what's next in the family?
Moving along, we get to a phrase that's maybe more insidious because it sounds like rigor. It mimics it.
Okay.
I did my research.
Oh, yeah. That one is dangerous because it sounds so diligent, right? Like they put the work in.
It really does. And the sources categorize this as the claim of effort, of thoroughness. The speaker says they did research, but crucially, without needing to present any actual evidence or their methodology or even list their sources. It cleverly shifts the entire burden of proof onto the listener. Now, you have to disprove the claimed but entirely unseen work they supposedly did.
Yeah, you're instantly on the defensive.
Totally. And the utility for the speaker is huge. They can imply that any disagreement just comes from the opponent being lazy, right? Failing to do the same mysterious research.
Yeah.
They grab the moral high ground of diligence without ever having to show their work.
And the sources for that research could be anything.
Could be anything. YouTube videos, random blogs. They don't even have to be credible sources in any traditional sense. They just have to be their sources.
Which means, obviously, the phrase often gets weaponized to defend genuinely fringe ideas or non-evidence-based claims. Because the speaker feels shielded by just saying they put in the effort.
That's the mechanism, precisely. And then finally, there's another one the sources link. I'm built different.
Right. That one feels more personal, less about research.
It is. This phrase, according to the source material, is basically an assertion of some unique inherent ability or insight, something that supposedly supersedes standard rules, logic, maybe even the need for actual knowledge.
So it's like...
It's the claim that, look, I don't need your credentials or your evidence because my inherent superior nature just lets me process the truth differently than, the common person. It's an appeal to personal exceptionalism.
My gut feeling trumps your facts because my gut is special.
Pretty much, yeah. It suggests the speaker has this natural, almost biological insight that just nullifies the need for reason, argument, or traditional learning.
Okay, so if you line these up, trust me, bro, I did my research, I'm built different. And then our main focus, I know ball. The pattern becomes really clear, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
There are all these immediate high-confidence assertions, perfectly designed, it seems, for the speed of online discourse.
And when we connect those dots for you, the listener, what you see is these phrases collectively reflecting this powerful modern trend. These are shorthand methods. They're designed specifically to bypass the traditional, often slower requirement of actually presenting evidence when you assert authority online.
Speed matters more.
They prioritize speed, definitely, confidence, and crucially, that internal group validation over things like rigor, citation, and external verification. Think about the rapid-fire context of platforms like, say, Twitter X. You've got character limits constraining nuance, or TikTok, where attention spans are, frankly, measured in seconds.
Stopping to list your sources kills the vibe.
It totally does. It's cumbersome. It's almost antithetical to the platform's inherent pace. So these credibility shorthands, they solve that problem. They provide instant, if often hollow, validation. They keep the momentum of the argument going, usually safely within the walls of the echo chamber.
It really does emphasize how much modern online talk seems to value the certainty of the assertion, maybe more than the verifiable quality of the assertion itself.
Sounding sure is half the battle.
Seems like it. Okay, let's shift now to that cultural crossover. How on earth did a phrase so specific to, like, NBA draft analysis suddenly break free and become usable for literally any topic? We need to look at how it got abstracted, right?
Yeah, the abstraction process is key. And the sources show it's a pretty textbook case of cultural breakout, driven almost entirely by the phrase's newly acquired ironic utility.
Once the irony was understood.
Exactly. Once it became less about knowing sports facts and more a universal commentary on the act of claiming authority, it gained perfect portability. It could travel anywhere. And we see it spreading rapidly, particularly to other fandoms and online communities where things like gatekeeping and expertise claims are really high stakes.
Makes sense.
The sources explicitly trace its path into film discussions, arguing about a director's intent or box office narratives or whether the latest sequel ruined a franchise. That's central to film talk online.
And the phrase works perfectly there, doesn't it? If someone posts some long, complex, maybe slightly obsessive theory about why some forgotten B-movie is actually a misunderstood masterpiece, someone else can reply, he knows ball, and everyone gets there. They mean, wow, this person really understands the deep, often unwritten rules of serious film discourse. Or maybe they're mocking that obsession.
Precisely, or both. We also see it clearly in music analysis, especially around things like genre authenticity, taste debates.
Oh yeah, music Twitter can be brutal.
Definitely. And of course, in political commentary, where basically everyone asserts they have the one true, definitive understanding of incredibly complex events like trade negotiations or election outcomes or foreign policy decisions.
I know ball about the geopolitical implications of whatever.
Pretty much. The sources confirm the phrase's meaning just became completely abstracted. You absolutely do not need to know anything about the 3-second rule in basketball anymore to know ball about, say, the Federal Reserve's interest rate policy.
It shifted focus.
It moved from being defined by its specific noun, ball, to being defined entirely by its universal function, which is making a comprehensive claim of knowledge about some kind of contained system, whatever that system might be.
And this spread, it relies heavily on the specifics of each platform, right?
Yeah.
The way the phrase gets used changes depending on the digital environment.
Oh, absolutely. The sources give us some really clear examples that highlight these differences between the digital arenas.
Okay, let's take TikTok.
Right. TikTok operates on visual impact, right? Rapid-fire humor, super easily digestible edits. So the sources detail this trend of edits that combine serious, often non-sports topics with heavily ironic captions like "he knows ball."
Can you give an example?
Sure. Like a video might show this highly produced, very serious-looking montage of a chef meticulously discussing, molecular gastronomy, set to really dramatic music.
Okay.
And the caption just reads, "he knows ball." The humor comes purely from that jarring juxtaposition. The serious chef, the sports slang. And the rapid editing style visually enhances the irony, making the claim of expertise seem almost ridiculous because of the sheer effort being put into performing this maybe mundane task seriously.
So it's visual absurdity reinforcing the linguistic mockery.
Exactly. The context is purely humor-driven. It relies on a quick, consumable joke that just assumes the viewer already understands the whole cultural meaning around performative expertise.
Okay, so contrast that with, say, Twitter or X.
Right. Twitter X, that remains the platform for viral debates, for argumentation, for rhetorical fencing, right?
Definitely more text-based combat.
For sure. And here, I know ball gets used frequently as both a genuine compliment and a sharp insult, sometimes almost simultaneously, or switching back and forth within the very same argument thread.
How does that work?
Well, in that high-pressure, argumentative environment, if someone posts a genuinely insightful, maybe source-backed point on, let's say, foreign policy, they might actually receive a sincere he knows ball compliment from someone who recognizes the quality.
Okay, so still used seriously sometimes there.
Sometimes. But if that same debate then degrades, as they often do, into personal attacks or just overly aggressive posturing, the phrase immediately gets weaponized. It becomes this tool of social judo. You claim argumentative superiority by ironically using the very language of superiority against your opponent.
Wow.
That real-time duality, that ability to flip its meaning instantly, it just shows its profound complexity and its utility in competitive online discourse.
So it means that on Twitter, maybe the phrase is less a final judgment on the actual knowledge being discussed and more like a barometer, a gauge of the social dynamics within that specific thread, like who currently has the rhetorical upper hand.
That's a really good way to think about it, yeah. It tracks the flow of the argument's social power.
Okay, so this successful abstraction, this cross-platform utility, that ultimately leads to the final stage, right? The meme economy and eventually commercialization.
That's the end point of the journey, pretty much.
When the meme format completely breaks down that original sports context, like when the phrase gets slapped onto non-sports images of someone looking incredibly serious while discussing, I don't know, fine art or economic theory.
Yeah, the philosopher pondering, he knows ball.
Right. That's when you know a phrase has hit true cultural ubiquity. The meme is really the vehicle that delivers this concept of performative expertise into basically every corner of the online world.
And that kind of universality, that ubiquity, it immediately attracts commercial attention. That's inevitable. Our sources analyze the user base for this phrase, and then the subsequent corporate adoption that really seals its status as a permanent fixture, a piece of cultural shorthand.
Who's using it most, according to the sources?
The core popularity seems concentrated primarily among Gen Z and millennial males, which, are highly desirable demographics for marketers.
Online consumers.
Online consumers, very active, often trend-setting groups. So once a phrase like this captures the language and the attention of that group, brands start seeing it as a direct linguistic shortcut to seeming relatable.
Right. It becomes a marker of authenticity for the brand, even if that authenticity is itself built on understanding irony.
Absolutely. It's quite meta. The sources confirm that meme versions of I Know Ball are now actively being used by actual brands and major influencers, specifically to signal, hey, we get the culture, we're in on the joke. And therefore, maybe you can trust our take too.
Wow. So when a big corporate account posts some highly technical explanation of a new product feature, maybe something kind of dry, and they add the caption, "We know ball," they're essentially trying to purchase immediate, low-effort cultural credit.
That's basically it. They're borrowing the coolness, the insider status associated with the phrase, and this commercial adoption, it really validates the phrase's function as this universal tool for projecting perceived relatability and cultural alignment. It cements its evolution, from that niche sports jargon into a truly global linguistic phenomenon.
That really is a complete and honestly pretty compelling arc. We started with what, a sincere compliment between basketball nerds, basically?
Pretty much.
Watched it morph into this super effective tool for critically mocking people who claim expertise maybe a bit too easily or loudly.
Yeah, the ironic turn.
And now we see actual brands using it to try and establish authenticity with key demographics online.
It is a remarkable journey for just 3 words. So to kind of synthesize the whole trajectory for you, the listener, I Know Ball kicked off as a sincere marker of genuine sports insight.
Right.
It transformed into this widely used, usually ironic, cultural artifact. And now it functions primarily as this really complex signal about our often skeptical relationship with expertise itself in the digital age.
So the key takeaway here, as we've kind of thoroughly explored based on these sources, it really has almost nothing to do with sports knowledge anymore, does it?
No, not fundamentally. The most important insight to maybe reiterate for everyone is that the phrase I know ball today is way less about actually knowing the topic itself, whether that's basketball or film or economics or spice racks, and far more about commenting on the process of claiming authority online. It's become a social tool, one that critiques the performance of expertise while kind of paradoxically, simultaneously participating in it through the performance of irony. It really highlights that maybe the most accessible, the most virally rewarded form of authority online today often looks like loud, fast confidence rather than quiet, slow, verified competence.
Okay. And as we wrap up this examination of these online credibility shortcuts, we want to leave you, the listener, with a question, something that really builds on the implications we found in this source material.
Yeah, consider this. If the common linguistic shortcut for asserting knowledge, the kind of phrase that goes viral, that achieves real cultural traction like I know ball has, if that shortcut is now inherently based on irony, on self-aware performance.
And what's left?
Exactly. What authentic, non-ironic linguistic markers of genuine expertise are actually left in these online spaces? What does real, earned authority sound like online now, in a way that doesn't immediately get caught up in this cycle of performance and skepticism?
That's a tough question.
It is. So maybe when you encounter the next viral debate online, ask yourself, how are people signaling that they truly know their material without just resorting to this kind of low-effort, potentially ironic shorthand? How do you distinguish between someone who knows ball only in that cynical, performative sense and someone who is genuinely, rigorously sharing deep insight in a way that somehow manages to bypass that immediate dismissal, that credibility vacuum we talked about? That's the real challenge, I think, presented by the shifting language of modern digital authority.